News of the hundreds of thousands of Syrians displaced from their homeland by a raging civil war and seeking shelter in other countries, including those in Europe, has become a constant in the media. Many countries have refused to open their borders to these refugees. Others have set limits. But in this part of the world, Iran, a country hosting more than 2 million refugees from its neighboring countries. Hello there, and welcome back to the program. On This Iran Today, a look at Iran's refugee population, one of the biggest and most protracted in the world. Stick around. The Middle East, a geopolitically important region that's become the scene of numerous ongoing clashes triggered by economic reasons and tribal divisions. Clashes that have had consequences not for the countries involved, but also for the neighboring countries. One of those consequences, refugees looking for shelter. It takes a lot of strength to just pull up the stakes and leave your country, your hometown, where you were born, where you grew up, went to school, got married, and had children. But when war breaks out, you might just have to run for it. Today, there are some 20 million people who have had to let go of everything they had in search of peace and security beyond the borders of their own country. Iran is an ideal destination for immigrants because there are no tribal clashes happening in it, and because it enjoys high security. Fed up with war and infighting in their countries, hundreds of thousands of Afghan and Iraqi nationals have emigrated to Iran over the years. Unofficial statistics put the number of refugees in the country at around 2,500,000 Afghans and 500,000 Iraqis. Official figures that only include individuals with ID cards put that number at less than 880,000 Afghans and 43,000 Iraqis. 97% of these refugees live in urban areas, and the remaining 3% in the so-called host cities. The greed and adventurism of the Taliban in Afghanistan and of Saddam Hussein in Iraq in the past 3 decades has sent massive waves of refugees flooding into neighboring countries. And as a safe and secure country sharing long borders with them, Iran has always been an important destination for those refugees.
The history of taking refugees by Iran well exceeds half a century. However, following the victory of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the number of asylum seekers rose dramatically in the country. Most of the refugees are from neighboring Afghanistan, while many others are from Iraq. A minority of refugees belong to other nationalities. For the time being, Iran houses over 1 million officially registered refugees. Add to this more than 2.5 million undocumented Afghan nationals who are living and working in Iran. These refugees land themselves many jobs which could have otherwise been taken by Iranians. Nowhere else is it the same in the world in terms of the number of migrants.
The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the UNHCR, is a United Nations agency established in 1950. Also known as the UN Refugee Agency, it has an office in every country and is mandated to protect and support refugees. The UNHCR office in Iran was established in 1984 in the throes of the Iraq-Iran war to support Iraqi and Afghan refugees here. Sivanka Dhanapala is the UNHCR's representative to Iran. I sat down with him in his office in uptown Tehran and asked him, among other things, about Iran's treatment of refugees.
On refugees, I think firstly I should say that Iran has played an exemplary role in the hosting of refugees, and I think it's an example for many to follow. And I would say that it's been a very large number of refugees that Iran has hosted, and for a very long time. We have something like 950,000 Afghan documented refugees. I say documented because they hold what we call an Amayesh card, which is the refugee registration card here in Iran. We also have, in addition to the Afghan population, we have just over 29,000 Iraqi refugees, and this is from the first Iraq conflict, refugees who have remained since then. So it's been a long-standing role, a generous role as host that Iran has played.
If you think the flow of foreign nationals into Iran has stopped, think again. Figures show that on average 2,000 Afghans illegally cross the border into Iran every day. That means 60,000 people a month. Protecting the 945-kilometer border between Iran and Afghanistan is no cakewalk. As a result, the border protection measures taken by governments on both sides of the border haven't achieved much. Mohammad Asif Darzabi is an envoy of Afghanistan's Ministry of Refugees and Repatriations in Iran. We sat down with him for an interview at the Afghan embassy in Tehran.
Individuals who stay in Iran illegally will be treated as required by the regulations of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Illegal migrants are prevented to enter Iran at border lines. If they can, however, pass the borders, the law forbids employers to hire them. Otherwise, they will have to work illegally or have to await their capture in Iran to be transferred to specific camps from where they will be deported to Afghanistan.
The settlement of Afghan refugees in Iran has not been without problems. For one thing, they have taken up many blue-collar jobs across the country to earn a living. They're pretty much everywhere, and employers looking for cheap labor without insurance coverage continue to hire them in violation of Iran's labor law. That in a country where the government is struggling to push down the unemployment rate that's still in the double digits, 10.5%, a figure that affects young Iranians more than any other group. But economist Ali Pakzad says the Afghans working in Iran have not been a threat to the local labor market.
اونچه که در فضای اقتصادی کشور ما اتفاق افتاد در مورد مهاجران افغان
As a matter of fact, Afghan refugees turn out to be of merit for Iran's economy. Of course, Iran incurred many social and possible state expenses by them, and people say from time to time that they took over jobs that could have otherwise been taken by Iranian workforce. But the fact is their immigration to Iran brought about much value added to the country. In effect, their entrance was welcome in Iran, which is why they were never seriously banned from entering Iran. Their entrance to Iran would have automatically been halted had it not had the value added it did in Iran's economy.
این جریان متوقف میشه.
The Iranian government issues work permits for all registered refugees. The Iranian Interior Ministry's Department for Foreign Nationals and Immigrants is tasked with determining the number of immigrants eligible for jobs and issuing them work permits. They are employed in 4,000 jobs and are granted insurance coverage. At the moment, the department has 190,000 people on its roster as members of the immigrant workforce.
خارجی در حوزه اشتغالشون.
No taxes are levied on foreigners working inside Iran. According to the laws of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Minister of Labor is supposed to charge every legal migrant with taxes on their employment. On the other hand, the social spending of municipalities must be repaid by the citizens, and the illegals are not bound to pay their share. Legal migrants, however, do pay the expenses to municipalities through the cards they receive as registry migrants.
مبلغی رو در قانون تعریف شده.
اون عده اشخاصی که به طور قانونی زندگی میکنن.
The illegals are given a card by the government of Iran allowing them to work in the country. The ones who have the card, after paying a designated price, can take jobs in Iran.
هزینه‌ای که معین شده میگیرن.
Apart from employment, education is among the other needs of the immigrants. Iran is a country with a young population that includes around 12 million schoolgoers and up to 4,400,000 university students. And since education is free for most of them, Iran's Ministry of Education allocated the biggest budgets in the country. The annual per capita budget for every student in Iran is $500. That, coupled with the 300,000 foreigners studying in Iran, has imposed hefty costs on the Iranian government.
There are nearly 11,000 foreign students in Iran who are studying in all academic levels in Iranian universities. Among these students are very good experts in different fields. Higher education for foreigners began in 1999 in Iran, and since then a community of more than 40,000 foreign graduates in Iranian universities has been formed. More than 20,000 foreigners are being trained in state workshops whose training programs are fully free of charge. The workshops are funded by a state-owned, non-profit or even international organizations.
2 years ago, the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a directive saying no Afghan child, not even immigrants who came to Iran illegally and without documents, must be kept from an education, and that all of them must be registered in Iranian schools. That led to a 10% increase in the number of Afghans in the country getting an education. The most recent statistics say Afghan students are studying at 1,400 schools across Iran, and that the UNHCR and other countries have paid for the construction of only 15 of them.
This year, things improved a lot as the leader instructed Iranian schools to let in the children of the illegals. This made things much better for us. Nearly 326,000 Afghan students used to study in Iranian schools, who were added by another 50,000 by the instruction. Such a large number of Afghan students are studying in Iran, and I hope they will be successful.
در اون جمله 50,000 دیگه اضافه شد.
Most of the Afghan refugees in Iran are barely literate. Some of them turn to criminal activity out of poverty. Official figures released by Iranian judicial organizations show Afghan nationals account for 36% of the first-degree murders committed in Iran. They also constitute most of the foreign nationals incarcerated in Iran, held largely for smuggling illegal drugs into the country.
این حجم عظیم از جمعیت که
Such a large population of refugees brings with it humongous economic, social, and even security challenges to the host country. As you know, concerns like terrorism, Salafism, and Takfirism are among security issues.
The first Persian Gulf War displaced thousands of Iraqis. To them, the best country to run to was next-door neighbor Iran. Although Iran had spent 8 years defending itself against the Iraqi army in the 1980s, still it opened its doors to those refugees and accommodated them in cities across the country.
Because of better educational and financial conditions, Iraqi immigrants have been able to reach better positions in Iran's job market. Dolatabad is an almost entirely Iraqi neighborhood in the southeastern corner of Tehran. When we went there, we found out many had gone back to Iraq for the mourning ceremonies during the month of Muharram, so we managed to speak with only a couple of them.
I cannot think of any other place where such a large number of migrants can easily live and work. As a migrant, I have never had any troubles living and working in Iran. No other countries would have welcomed us in their soul as the Iranians did. Many of our wives are Iranian and our children are born here. In order to buy properties and land, you must have Iraqi passport or Iranian documents. If you have them, you can buy everything, including cars and houses, and you can land yourself a good job here. In order to get your driver's license, you must have documents indicating that you are an Iranian or Iraqi citizen. You can very easily obtain such documents in Iran.
This is why I think the High Commissioner, myself, and a number of others within UNHCR have been pointing very in a demonstrative way to Iran as an example, because I think when you describe anything or anyone as being exemplary, it is to look to that as an example, as something to follow. And I think that is what we are trying to also indicate. We're trying to build on the positive experience and the positive role that Iran has played. I think there are other countries also who have demonstrated leadership in the realm of refugees. And it is unfortunate that we are seeing the discord in certain countries today.
Although the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have officially ended, the expats from those countries living here say they are not going back to their own countries of origin. They've assimilated into Iranian society so much, set up their own businesses, send their children to school, among other things. They also say they're not going back because their countries lack the requisite infrastructure, and also the fact that the threat of war and insecurity will be hanging over their heads like the Damocles sword forever.
The Iranian government has ordered all illegal aliens in the country and those whose visas have expired to go back to their countries. But so far, not many have chosen to leave.
Fortunately, now that an official administration is ruling over Afghanistan, the Afghan government has set one of its principal strategies to call on Afghan nationals in other countries to return to their homeland. Ever since 2012, and with the support of the UN and cooperation of Iran and Pakistan, the return of Afghan residents to their country has been considered as a primal strategy of the Afghan government.
با حمایت سازمان ملل و با همکاری کشورهای ایران و افغانستان.
از روزی که حکومت وحدت ملی
Ever since the National Unity Government and His Highness Ashraf Ghani took office in Afghanistan, things are improving a lot. Moreover, Mr. Balkhi, the Minister of Refugees and Repatriation of Afghanistan, has made unflagging efforts in this regard and always calls on Afghan migrants to return to their country. But this is a very time-consuming process. A large number of Afghans are returning to the country voluntarily these days.
برگشتانده شود بله. این با یک زمان طولانی ضرورت داره.
As one of the most stable countries in one of the most unstable regions of the world, Iran is a prime destination for the displaced. But despite a huge refugee population on its soil, Iran does not receive much financial assistance from other countries or the United Nations. And an ailing economy exacerbated by sanctions imposed by Western countries over the past years has only served to make it more difficult for Iran to attend to the needs of those refugees.
The sanctions on the banking sector even disrupted the transfer of funds to the UNHCR's office in Tehran.
I think there were many challenges, and I think that it was important to try and face some of those challenges head on. I think one of the biggest challenges were banking transactions, and if we were to ensure that a project was signed with a partner inside Iran, the transfer of funds from headquarters to our office here was a tremendous challenge. But we have been able to carry forward, and we've been able to find ways in which we can still continue with our operations.
Still, the money allocated to the refugees in Iran is nowhere near enough. The gap between the funds allocated to Iran and those allotted to Europe is huge. Hassan Ghashqavi with Iran's foreign ministry says the money that European countries receive from the UNHCR is $3,000 per refugee. But how much do they spend? $300 to $400 at most. In 2010, the budget for Iran went from $10 million to $25 million, 50% of which is used to cover the costs of the agency's office and the rest on the refugees. That means every Afghan refugee receives only $25.
هزینه‌های سنگین رو خود جمهوری اسلامی در حقیقت در این زمینه داره.
Iran has incurred heavy expenses for housing foreign migrants, but above all the concerns of Iran is the heed that these refugees need to be given by international organizations. Unfortunately, all financial supports are being offered to the asylum seekers with a tinge of political preferences. Many countries dishonor their promises in international humanitarian conventions.
این وجهش برای ما عمده تر هستش از نیازهای مادی.
This can be compared with the situation in Europe today. European countries are setting up fences and barbed wire around their borders to keep migrants off their soil and refuse a fair distribution of them. It's still unclear how the civilized world is going to sort out the refugee problem over the long haul, and how countries around the world are going to treat them once they arrive on their shores.
Security is a basic human right, and the lack of it forces people to travel thousands of kilometers, braving tough, perilous conditions for it. Despite the lamentable conditions in the Middle East, Iran has been able to maintain peace and stability on and within its borders over the past decades and take millions of refugees under its wings. Some countries have threatened Iran's security over the past years, but the Islamic Republic has been able to defuse those threats by expanding its missile capability and by improving welfare for its citizens. And that does it for another Iran Today. Thanks for watching us. Make sure you join us again right here on Press TV next week when we look at another issue of import concerning Iran.